President Trump wanted to shine the spotlight on the welfare of immigrants in America, basically highlighting how many or the amount of immigrants per household benefit from the welfare and care of Americans. And I just wanted to point out something that I find quite interesting. There are numerous countries on that list. 13 of those countries are from the African continent, and I believe last year I made a video highlighting why I think a lot of the immigrants that are traveling, leaving Africa, going abroad are not all skilled immigrants. The reason why I'm saying this is because if you look at the list, you'll notice that there's one particular country where you would expect to even be on the list, but is not on the list, and that is India. And India, when you look at the population of Indians, they are the majority compared to the rest, right? They're almost close to a billion, right? But you look at the list that America or Donald Trump released, you don't see India on the list. That just goes to show how hardworking they are, good citizens, and why they contribute to the American economy. Indian immigrants, wherever they go, they do their utmost best not to be a burden to other people. And then you have on the top of the list a particular country which he has a very big issue with, and I very much understand and I respect, on why I believe certain immigrants are not only there to cause an issue for other immigrants that are hardworking, but rather also becoming a burden for the country that they move to. My ideology still remains, as an immigrant myself, there are certain immigrants such as myself, and I'm very happy to point it out, that we are limited to what we can do as immigrants because of the burden of other immigrants that they've placed on us. And the hardworking immigrants becomes anxious and worried about his circumstances because of another immigrant who really don't give a shit about what he or she contributes to that country's economy. You find immigrants that are not that skilled, they move to another country and they bring all that laziness with them, and they begin to live that same lifestyle and pretend to really care about the country's laws, but don't really care about the country's laws, break the country's laws as much as they want to. And then, yeah, I have a place I can go back to, whereas you have other immigrants who are really trying their best to work hard and to fulfill their children's dreams and do as much as they can to help out their families back home. They don't get those benefits anymore because of those lazy immigrants. I think there is a change happening, particularly on our continent, and slowly but surely I'm beginning to see this even in my own friends, in myself as well. Young Africans are starting to realize that maybe there might not be a better world out there. Maybe the option is to stay here and actually fight and build and focus on actually try to maintain and make sure we keep the little that we still have going until eventually the wheels fall off. What I mean by that is, there used to be a time when I was growing up where selling land, selling property, selling your vehicle, parents selling off basically all of their assets to sell their kids overseas was such a big deal. And I come from a world where doing that is not such a big problem. It's not a taboo. If you hear of a family trying to sell land because they're trying to send their kid overseas to go and study to one of the prestigious universities, that was very common back then. And I believe it was around the time when I was still growing up, and I eventually migrated to a different country, still on the continent. But as I'm building a company of my own, and as I'm trying to start this, this startup and become a founder for myself, I'm always taking note of and trying to understand the shift in which our society is going. And I'm beginning to realize that a lot of the young people that I'm dealing with, a lot of the young people that I come across, aren't living in that world or in that bubble where they feel it is necessary to even travel abroad. Now, this is not a video to attack anyone who lives on the continent and feels like the only option they have is to travel abroad, to go live in America or live in Canada or go to Australia or go to Europe. That's your choice. I really, I encourage you to do that. But this is a video that mainly focuses on trying to speak on the reasons why I think any of that options will eventually become obsolete and no longer be useful for us as young Africans, young entrepreneurs who are trying to come up and trying to establish ourselves in the marketplace. there used to be a time where our parents would definitely make major sacrifices because they want to send their child overseas, and they want to send us overseas to go learn. And I've become that individual that I no longer glamorize living overseas. And I recently posted a video where I spoke about why I think it's not really that of a big deal anymore if you come to think of it. And if you live in a country where you're a bit privileged, you begin to see that even going overseas has now become a luxury to you. See, for most people traveling abroad and going overseas, and let me speak specifically for people living outside of Africa, when we hear of tourists coming over this side, we know them to be tourists because they're coming here for leisure and pleasure, etc., right? But for any African person traveling overseas, it's usually, I'm not saying it's everyone, it's a particular group of people who do travel overseas for pleasure, usually the elites and people who are well off. And I want to be part of that people, just saying. But for individuals who are coming from the middle class or lower class groups from the continent of Africa, traveling overseas is sort of like an escape and a way to find a better life. Now, I'm going to munch my words before I say something that might offend certain people. I have thought of traveling overseas before. I have thought of traveling to a country that I feel will offer me the best possible opportunities for my skills and maybe allow me to live a life that will probably, a lavish life as we are sold. But the more I grew and I came to realize that, by the way, it's all thanks to social media and the world of internet that has made things so much more visible to me, that I'm able to see all the BS in certain things, and I'm looking at traveling overseas becoming something of a burden for me, which is why I recently posted this video where I spoke about why I think I don't ever want to leave Africa, not in the sense of traveling abroad, but I don't ever want to migrate to an overseas country because of any particular reason, because I feel I'm better off being here. Now, this might not be the same sentiment for a lot of young individuals, which is why I understand why certain people will make that decision to leave or want to go and live abroad. But for me, there are individuals like myself who think it's no longer necessary to sell land, it's no longer necessary to sell your asset, then kudos to you and I, because we are just but a few of individuals or young Africans who actually think it is possible to create wealth while still being here. We are the only population or group of people who sell land to travel abroad. And I think I pointed out in the beginning of the video by saying that there was a time where obviously Africans were living like that, where they would sell land. Parents would make sacrifices to send their children overseas to go and learn at some of the prestigious universities, and then eventually with the hopes of coming back, but they really never come back, which is what would lead me to even assume that the talents that we're sending abroad and the talents that are going abroad, they really never come back. So that means the skills that these young people are going there supposedly going to learn and bring back home never really come back home, because they stay there and they establish themselves there, they start families there, and then a whole new life and a whole new generation begins right that side, which is really not helpful for anyone who thinks that the continent needs to develop. And we always speak about developing our country, but our continent also, so to speak, but we really never think about what could actually help develop our continent. If you gave an African a choice to choose where they would live, it would be anywhere besides Africa. And it's pretty obvious, because our continent is one of the shittiest continents to live on. Let's just be honest with that. But what makes it so, what makes it so, I think I might have a fight with people who might find me crazy, but I'm just that person who seemed to not look at the, bad side of the continent. I'm only looking at the good side. And people probably think that's weird, and which is what makes me human, because I have acknowledged that there is no point in running away from anything that we are struggling with here. And we've continuously ran away from our problems and our situations for a very long time, to the point where nothing is really happening. What about our future generations and the generations to come? What would they say of this when they eventually figure out the solution? And so I usually think about the typical African person, because you give them the options to, you ask them, where would you like to live? They would give you any other place in the world besides here, because they do not actually see like the amount of potential the land itself has. When they speak of potential, they will tell you something like, oh yeah, no, we do believe, I do know that we have, we have minerals, we have all sorts of natural resources, but I don't really think this is the best place to live here. So then I ask myself, but what about the Asians who come over here and establish businesses in your country, for example, and they eventually get it right and they eventually become millionaires in your country? What would you say of them? What is it that they see that you haven't seen, to the point where you feel like your only option is to leave? So these are the kind of questions that I'll ask myself, and it will push me to want to not leave anymore. And I guess it's something that many also may feel in a way. When it comes to Africans, talents will go where it's mostly needed, but most people leave Africa without skills or talent. This is another fact, another thing that I believe about immigration and migration as a whole. When we actually think about people leaving the continent, these are not people who are living with any sort of skills. I mean, migrations, when it comes to, I might butcher this, but the migration that's recently taking place, where young Africans are risking their life to cross the sea, I believe it's the Mediterranean Sea. I mean, are all these young individuals talented? Are they skilled? Do they have any sort of skills that they're actually taking with them to Europe? That's my question. Like, who exactly is leaving, and who are we sending, or who is going there willingly in hopes that they will find this better life that they're trying to seek? And do they have the tools that they will need to actually allow them to do the things they need to do to acquire and achieve this life that they are going to look for? And if I'm honest, I personally believe I do not have the skills that will allow me to survive in any of those countries, even though I do. I do. I guess it's just a matter of coming to a point where you realize that it's not so much about the skills, it's more so much about I guess, do you have the potential to survive in those streets, so to say? Do you actually have the potential to survive, or are you just going to become a burden to other people? Are you going to a country where you're becoming a burden to other people, living off their tax? Are you going to live off, their income? Because remember, when you go there, the government supports you. Yes, of course. And Africans love that. Africans love hearing, no, the government will support you. They'll pay for your house and etc. whatsoever. Do you realize that money does not fall from the sky? It's actually someone's hard-earned tax money that they're paying towards the government, and it's coming to you, someone who's becoming a parasite to them. And then when they actually hate you, then you're like, oh, these people hate me. But they have the rights because you are becoming a burden to them. You guys get what I mean? So I just like to figure that out. I guess I might just be the only one who thinks this way. And also another factor that will add to that is, even those that are living with talent are now complaining, to the point where they are saying, like, the level of skills that you take with you coming from Africa, if you learned medicine, for example, here, and you hope to go and work in a clinic or hospital that side, they might not really consider you like that unless you've really taken their courses and their programs. And I say they because I'm generalizing all countries outside of the continent. But think about it this way: if you were to learn medicine in any of the prestigious universities across the African continent, and you go and work in, you just choose out of the 54 countries one of the best countries that offers the best salaries and best living condition, wouldn't you make twice as much than what you are going to make working overseas. I know that might sound a bit outlandish, but it's just a thought that I have, because when it comes to asking this type of question, you also have to consider mentioning the whole of the continent, not just one or two countries, but the whole of the continent, and weigh out the options. And I, for once, think that our qualifications are not considered because you're coming from a third world country. It's just that. And it's not that they hate you or anything like that. It's just that you come from a third world country, and that's the truth. The truth is, they don't think the level of education you might have or the level of knowledge you might have might not be suitable for them, so therefore you have to go through their program, which is why they will mostly reject you, and they'll tell you your education is not good enough, you might as well go work at McDonald's or Burger King whatsoever. And you don't want to come from a country where your education is not considered such a big deal, and then you go to these countries hoping that they respect you, but they don't really respect you. Like, you can say back home I'm called a doctor, but here you just you flip burgers. So I don't know. So my solution is and this is my solution that I'm offering. I believe it might not be the same for everyone. We need to ask ourselves why we are here and why it's important to not sell our big possessions. We need to start questioning our education system. Our education still, do we still offer, or are we still being offered the best educations for ourselves? And welcoming as we are, I think that's the word. We need to understand why certain people who come across, like for example, our Asian brothers, when they come over the side, how are they able to establish companies and do what they're able to do without any issues? Because if you get taxed more for being a citizen of a country, of a particular country, and a foreigner comes through and he creates a business here and he's doing it better than you would have done, what's the problem there? You need to ask yourself, what exactly are you missing that they have already received? So that's pretty much that. And for me personally, I'm building the system that I'm trying to eventually launch in the coming few months, where it's going to be a financial system that should help individual understand their economy. Personally, for me, I think if people don't understand how their money work, they're most likely going to think the best place for them to go with their money is abroad, which is why I'm trying to establish this little startup that is going to help every individual on the continent, young and old, understand their money, understand why and how their money works, in the sense that once they eventually, and I'm sorry that I really don't have the words, but as a founder, I don't really think my words matter. I think the work needs more. The work should speak for me. So young individuals and all people should have accessibility to understand how their money works, whether it's on a digital platform, whether it's virtually, whether it is in any sort of currency. We need to understand how our money works and how our money works for us. And I think at this point, the systems that we have, the banking system, the financial institutions that we are relying on, aren't as user friendly. To be quite honest with you, I use a particular bank that I still don't understand certain features. I still don't understand certain offers, and certain, I guess we could call it banking systems. I don't understand them that well, but that's a problem. And I feel like to start off by building a business, you need to start off by solving a problem. And I have that problem where I want to understand my money and I want to understand how my money works. And I believe if I have this problem, it might be a problem for someone else. So I've been trying to build the system with a team of young individuals who are we all just striving and pushing towards this big dream of achieving this goal of creating the startup. And I'm calling it Smart Money Catalyst because it's definitely going to be that, a catalyst where people who are smart and want to be smart about their money can go to for information,